I'm going to demonstrate creating a seamless tiled texture from a photograph. In this case, I'm going to use a tree, so I want like tree bark that I can then apply to a three-dimensional tree and 3D Studio Max or Maya, some program like that. Same technique could be used to create a seamless background like for a website. I used to have a demo like this using a photograph of coffee beans where I selected a portion of it and made it look seamless and tileable to be used as a lightweight background repeated like for a coffee website. And the image I used was actually used on many coffee sites at the time. Now, I decided to make this a little challenging. If you see some bark you like and take a picture of it, one thing you want to do is make sure you don't have the problems this one has, where we have this lighting from the right. So the right side of the tree is bright, and then the left side is in shade, or is shaded. But sometimes you'll run into a situation where you need to make compensation, so I just want to include that in here just to raise the level of difficulty a little bit. Now, I haven't practiced this, so we'll see how it goes. So this is a pine tree from northern Michigan, and so first thing I want to do is, well, first thing I could do is show the problem. If I went in here and selected an area that I wanted to be my tile, and I'm looking for an area. This area is kind of interesting in here. So I'll drag this and try to find a point where maybe it lines up a little bit. Okay, let's say that's it. Now if I define that as a pattern and go to another image here, I'm going to create a pattern layer, and it saw that. Now I'm going to scale it down. Not that far. Okay. So here you can see the seams. The shading of the tree creates this light-dark transition. And you can see that it's also kind of lighter at the top than at the bottom. So this is a lot of seams. This is what we are trying to get rid of. Okay, so that's the problem we're trying to solve. Go back in here. I'm going to deselect that. So the first thing I want to do is try to even out the lighting a little bit. So we're looking at the brightness here. I'm going to go and add a brightness contrast. There are other tools you could use here, but this is a very simple way of looking at this. So here, I can brighten and darken the image, but I want to actually brighten the left side of the image and not the right side of the image. So what I'm going to do is, here the brightness contrast adjustment has a mask, a layer mask, and I am going to select that, and I'm going to create a gradient. So I have black and white. If I select the gradient, we have a black to white gradient. And if I go over here and draw like so, you see that there's a gradient. There's a gradient in the layer mask for the brightness and contrast filter. So that means that if I go in and adjust the brightness, it's only affecting the selected part. The area that is white in the mask is affected, the area that's black is not. So you see the left side of the image is not affected, and the right side is. Now I was actually planning on brightening the left side, but I kind of like the effect of darkening the right side a little bit better. So here it's more flat, more even. If there's too much of it, I could go in and change the opacity of that adjustment layer to kind of dial it down a little bit. But let's see what we kind of get with this. Okay, so using a brightness contrast adjustment and a gradient mask to control where it's affected. A couple things. I'm going to make a copy of the background in case I want to go back to that. Then I'm going to merge this down into this. So here we have the original photograph, and here we have the one with the brightness contrast adjustment. And I'm doing that because I'm going to be copying pixels from this, and I want that brightness contrast adjustment baked in, so to speak. All right, so let's again try creating a tile here. And I'm looking for something at the corners where there are features that might match up. And I, again, do a define pattern. Go back over here. Open up this pattern. Select the new one. And you can see it's much more even. There's still a seam. There's still some variation in brightness here. But this is a starting point. Okay, so let's take a look at this and look at how to go from here. I'm going to copy this to the clipboard, and I'm going to create a new file based on the clipboard. Paste that in. Okay, so here we just have that tile. Now I'm going to use the offset filter to bring this edge to the center to meet this edge, basically wrapping around. It helps if you know the dimensions of the image. This is, okay, 970, okay, almost 1,000 by 1,400. So if I go into the offset filter, you can kind of see where the X is. If I shift this down more towards the center and horizontally, so you could go by the numbers if you know the dimensions, or you could just kind of play with this. So here we see the seams here. So the goal here is to get rid of the seams. Now to do this, we're going to use the cloning tool. I'm going to drag this off. Okay, so we can see it here, and we have our original image over here. And so what we're going to do is kind of get rid of these seams by cloning from the original image over this. Might be a little easier if I actually drag this one off too. Okay, so I can see these kind of side by side. Okay, I'm going to zoom into this image a little bit, so Control plus. I don't need that selection anymore. Alright, so to get rid of the seam, basically I'm going to be copying information from the original image. So if I wanted like this kind of crack or fissure to continue, what I would do is I'd find where it is over here in this image. And basically it's, on the left side where I was copying from. So basically this corner is like right here. So I'm going to take the cloning tool. Okay, here it is. Clone stamp tool. I'm going to select an appropriate brush to use with that. Probably want to make that a little bit bigger. I do want the brush to be soft so that what I'm cloning blends in. Okay, now what I need to do is select the source using the Alt key. And I want to see a spot that I can recognize. So like there's this kind of corner here. So here I'm going to hold down the Alt key. And I'm actually going to zoom in slightly here to be a little more precise. Okay, I'm going to hold down the Alt key. Select my registration point here in the source. Then go over here. And you can see within the brush tip the image that I'm copying over. So I'm going to align that here. You see, if you have it aligned, as I click and brush, there's no change because it's the same image. But if I go down here, we're breaking that seam. So the trick is to, now I want to stay away from the edges because if I do anything on the edges, I'm going to create a new seam. Now I could see if it works here as well. For different parts of the image, you might need to be copying different parts from the source. But this seems to be working pretty well so far. I'm getting a lot more of that dark pattern. Now here there's this dark spot. Now one thing to be aware of, if there's something very distinctive like that, as it's tiled, you'll see that repeated and you'll see the pattern immediately. So I'm actually going to undo that. Try to avoid that. I'm going to brush along here. I think I might try cloning some of this from here down. So I need to find that in the source image. That seems to be part of the image, is that it's coming from the right side. So that seems to be in here. Yes, this could be useful in here. So I'm going to create a new source, just like the kind of the tip of this. Click, go over here, find the same point. I'm going to click on this so that it's active. And start bringing in some of that texture. Now I got pretty close to the edge there. I don't know if I hit it or not. Okay, so at this point, I don't see any seams. But then again, yeah, I don't see any seams here. So the thing to do with this is to test it by going back into Filter, and I can do the offset again. And we're seeing the other part of this. Now there's a pretty different color on the edges than the center, so this is going to have a kind of stripy effect. But let's go ahead and test this out. So with this selected, I'm going to go into Edit, Define Pattern, Pattern 15. We have this image back here. Okay, to see that, I guess I'll minimize these. Select the new pattern and fill. Okay, so There's some things that I would want to get rid of. You can see that there are no seams, but there is a pattern. Like this dark area here, I'd probably go in and eliminate that because that's a very obvious thing that's repeated across. You might want to go in and minimize the color shift in there as well. But that's the basic technique. There's trial and error, there's experience helps, and it can take a while to get a perfect tile. But this is the technique. That's the original photograph. This is the tile. And this is what it looks like repeated. So if I look at the tile, you can see that this is the dark spot. I'd want to clone that out. I could actually do some cloning within the image here. If I just wanted to kind of bring down kind of more of this, I could try to get rid of like that dark spot using some of this texture from up here to get rid of the color shift here. I could try to do an adjustment again. Perhaps hue and saturation. Okay, after a little more tweaking, I went offline and just worked on this a little bit more, evening out the color and doing some internal cloning within this. I don't know if you can notice that, but like this is repeated here, and I cloned something up here. Yeah, this is cloned over here to get rid of the spot that was there before, and it's also cloned here to kind of break up the pattern a little bit. And this is where I'm at currently in terms of what it looks like repeated. So that's my pattern. I could go in and make some adjustments here. And you can always go in and work on enhancing the image. And if I want more brightness and contrast, here I'm using curves to go in, kind of bring out the texture more. My original image was kind of flat, low contrast, but for texture I'm applying it in the scene, I might want more contrast. So using all the tools in Photoshop to create the highest quality texture I can get.